Hello and welcome to the Space and Geospatial Virtual Pavilion, courtesy of KTN. My name is Suzie Imber.
And I'm Denise Campbell, and we are going to be your MCs, hosts. I don't even quite know what the word is at the moment, but we're going to be with you for the next couple of hours. The actual virtual pavilion will be with you for the next, I think it's still 2 weeks, pretty much for the whole of COP. And it is actually amazing. We've got some absolutely fantastic speakers who represent the space and geospatial sector across academia, across industry, across government. So you're going to hear from some amazing, amazing people. We're going to be here for, as I say, until about 12 o'clock. We've got a bit of housekeeping to go to talk about first.
Yeah, so as we run through the different sessions, we'd really love you to participate. And so to do that, there's a chat box, so you can chat amongst yourselves in the chat box. There's also a Q&A box, though. So if you'd like to ask a question, please don't hold back. Type your question into the Q&A box and we'll be monitoring those throughout the sessions. Also, if you like someone else's question, you can upvote it and that will make it rise to the top of our list. So please go ahead and do that as well.
I've just learned what upvote is. I had no idea what upvote means. I think the really important thing is ask difficult questions, ask awkward questions, ask interesting questions. I mean, there's been so much about COP already. COP's been going for 24 hours and it's been wall-to-wall coverage. And there's, so much stuff that people want to ask. So that is the most important thing, is to ask interesting and difficult questions. Who have we got coming up? Sort of 10:50, we're going to have a big panel discussion. We've got a few videos from government ministers, from various players in the sector. But I think what we'll do is we're going to start off with Luca Budello from KTN, who's got a talk for 10 minutes that's going to give us a little bit of context about what KTN do and what the virtual pavilion is all about. So let's hand over to Luca, if Luca's there.
And here I am, Dallas.
Hi, Luca, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and good to see you here today.
It's good to see you. We know you mean business because you're standing up, and I think that's always a good sign.
I like to walk when I talk, good. So here I am. And yes, good morning to everyone. And I love to extend a very warm welcome from my daughter's room here in Leeds to the audience and the speakers of the Space and Geospatial Virtual Pavilion. I'm Luca Budello, as I was introduced, and I lead on Geospatial here at KTN. I'm also the co-curator of the pavilion, together with my colleague Andy Bennett. And we are pleased to bring to you a fantastic selection of speakers, of talks, of events, delivered to you in collaboration with our many partners. Yesterday, COP26 has opened in Glasgow, and representatives of national delegation from all UN member states and observers from civil society, NGO, academic have flocked to Glasgow, and for the next 12 days, they will discuss and negotiate how to best achieve 4 goals. Securing net zero by mid-century, adopt to protect communities and natural habitat, mobilize the $1 trillion that are required to transition to a low carbon economy, and finalize the Paris rulebook, or the plan to implement the Paris Agreement, which sees collaborations as an important factor to accelerate the delivery of climate goals. As you will hear from many speakers in this pavilion, geospatial intelligence is critical to understand the pulse of the planet, to solve the climate change challenge, to influence changes at the global level. We need to understand what's happened in our communities at the local level. And I like to describe location data as the link identifier connecting the dots between objects, the infrastructure we use every day, the roads, the bridges, the building, our homes, people, us, our community, systems which we rely upon, transport system, energy system, and the environment, the natural habitat that supports our well-being. Today, we're opening COP26. We're opening the Space and Geospatial Pavilion for COP26. And for the next 11 days, our aim is to support decision makers to understand that geospatial intelligence is key business intelligence to build a more resilient and prosperous tomorrow. And we aim to draw the attention not only on the data, on the technical and the technology base, the sensors, the data, the analytics, but most importantly on the role of innovation, inclusive growth, collaborations, cultural change, which are extremely important to deliver on the climate emergency. And this is what we do at KTN, really. We help companies to build new products, new services that think beyond pure economic prosperity, but also focus on the delivery of impact, of positive social and environmental impact. We do this by building powerful connection, powerful networks, and we build the cross-sector collaborations. And the Pavilion is all about collaborations. 30 plus organizations have joined us, have partnered with us to deliver a program of events that is exciting and diverse. We have some few key sector collaborators that have helped us to shape the program of the Pavilion. And we are delighted to have on board some commercial partners which are helping us to achieve more impact. And also some international partners and cross-cutting partners, which are helping us to do outreach, to disseminate and amplify our message. The Pavilion opens today, and for the next 9 days, we will have 2 or 3 sessions per day curated by one of our many partners. And the content will be extremely varied and following broadly the presidency program. Some topics will be technical, like the fair climate change service by the Open Geospatial Consortium. And some of this will be more inspirational. One of my favorite, for example, for which I very much look forward to, is the session co-curated by the Group on Earth Observations, Indigenous Alliance and Cultural Survival, that want to explore how Indigenous communities use Earth observation data to build culturally relevant products and services. And we will hear from some of these communities via some of their leaders from Siberia, from Canada, from the United States. We will have a session on the decarbonization of ports, on the resilience of energy systems, on diversity and inclusion, ESG and investment, pitching session from up-and-coming startups, and launch a report on greenhouse gas mapping capability from space. Starting from this afternoon at 2 o'clock, we will look at how climate change contributes to global instability and socioeconomic insecurity, with a session looking at the role of Earth observation in telling stories of displacement. On the final 2 days of the event of the Pavilion, on the 10th and the 11th of November, we will have 2 days of plenaries. We'll look at the challenges of climate change as we approaching the closing of the negotiation. And in a number of parallel sessions, we will look at the solution coming from geospatial intelligence into a number of sectors like transport, cities, finance, but also adaptation, innovation, nature, and etc. We have an amazing lineup of speakers covering very diverse topics, and there are too many to mention all of them, but just to give you a flair from the plenary session, we will have Manali Kumar, an academic from the University of St. Gallen, talking about the politics of climate change and how developing and developed nations have differential access to opportunities. We will have in just an hour time Federica Bietta, Managing Director of the Coalition of Rainforest Nation, delivering a talk on the importance of building collaboration with nation states to support local community, to access finance in order to better manage their natural resources and curb deforestation. We will look beyond net zero with Argino Cavada, with a talk from NASA, with a talk looking at how Earth observation monitor biodiversity and help us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal. And we will also have US former Vice President and climate activist Al Gore, delivering a talk which is a pre-recorded session, which I already watched, and I think is very inspirational and very personal. He's going to talk about Climate Trace, his current project, but also he will draw some personal stories on how he helped the science community to access weather data from the intelligence community back in the 80s. Something I never heard before, so something new, something interesting. Now, the Pavilion is not just about knowledge sharing, it's also about networking. And I exhort each and every one of you to go and explore our partners page, go and explore the delegate list, starting from 12 o'clock today and throughout the days till the end of the Pavilion. We will have a number of networking tables. They are non-moderated and they are theme specific: finance, infrastructure, maritime, transport, nature, and many more. Go and enjoy talking with your peers, go and mingle, go and do new networking, and use the one-to-one meetings to set yourself up to get to know other colleagues. And if you have new ideas, and we desperately need some, prepare an elevator pitch, a 3-minute pitch. Go and explore some of the collaborators, some of the delegates. Set yourself up for a meeting. Go and do a 3-minute pitch. We need new solutions to the climate crisis, and building collaboration is key to accelerate the pace of innovation. And we would like to see some of this collaboration coming out of this Pavilion. Well, I wish you a fantastic session this morning, and please tune in throughout COP, and let's connect for positive change. Thank you very much, and back to you, Suzie and Dallas.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much, Luca. That was excellent. I think collaboration is going to be the word of the day today. So yes, do what Luca says. Get networking. This is a networking platform as much as there's anything else. And don't forget to ask questions as we bring in our terrific speakers. Get your questions in and we will monitor them and ask as many as we can. Thank you very, very much to our partners as well. There's a partners page that you can go and look at all the partners who are supporting the virtual platform too. Okay, who have we got next?
Yeah, so shortly we're going to be talking to Alicia Curated, who's the CEO of KTN. But before we do that, we're going to introduce just a quick video from Ivan McKee. He's a Scottish Minister for Business, Trade, Tourism and Enterprise.
Good morning. And it's an absolute pleasure to warmly welcome you to the first day of the Space and Geospatial Virtual Pavilion, organised by the Knowledge Transfer Network in collaboration with over 30 partners. This event will showcase how the use of space data and location intelligence can help unlock opportunities for business and governments in achieving carbon emission targets, building solutions across sectors, and tackling societal challenges. Space research has already been critical in averting one major environmental disaster. It was NASA satellite data that revealed a frightening and growing hole in the ozone layer over the South Pole, galvanising public concern that in 1987 produced the Montreal Protocol, the first international agreement addressing a global environmental problem. Since then, thanks to worldwide restrictions on damaging chlorofluorocarbons, the ozone situation has stabilised and a full planetary recovery is expected. And as this case showed, space can provide the vital information needed to understand a problem and also a surprising range of ways to solve it. This innovative thinking and collaboration is something that we are very passionate about in Scotland, and I'm pleased to champion this today. Scotland, of course, is delighted to be hosting the COP26 Climate Change Summit, the most important global gathering of the year, which will deliver increased global ambition to net zero in a way that is fair and just. In Scotland, we have the world's most ambitious legislative framework for emissions reduction, and we remain absolutely committed to a just transition to net zero emissions by 2045. It is a truly national endeavour where no one can be left behind. At the same time, Scotland places great importance on our space sector, with an ambition to be Europe's leading space nation and to capture a £4 billion share of the global space market and 20,000 jobs in the sector by 2030. However, as we build on our present strengths, within the space sector, we must also focus on its future sustainability. As I said earlier, our transition to net zero is a truly national endeavour. And this is why Scotland's first ever space strategy, published on 20th of October this year at Scotland's Space Day at Dubai Expo, has a focus on sustainable space as one of its key actions. Scotland's space strategy, which was developed in partnership between industry, academia and government, sets out how we plan to position our nation as a thought leader in taking a more sustainable approach to space activity. This enables the sector to contribute towards our net zero ambitions and will include the development of a world-leading environmental strategy. The space ecosystem in Scotland has already taken steps towards adopting that environmentally conscious approach. For example, Scottish-based launch vehicle manufacturers are using a mixture of innovative fuels, smart designs, advanced materials and manufacturing techniques in order to dramatically reduce the carbon footprint associated with launch. Indeed, a recent scientific study undertaken by the University of Exeter calculated that a single Orbex Prime launch would produce up to 86% less emissions than a similar-sized vertical launch vehicle powered by fossil fuels. And earlier this year, our industry body, Space Scotland, led an initiative to develop sustainable space challenges that allow us to better understand the environmental impact of the space industry and help us all to work towards a more sustainable future for the sector. It is this approach that, in my belief, makes our space community in Scotland different. This is our unique selling point, and we must continue to build upon and champion these values in all that we do. The space sector in Scotland has a key role to play in tackling climate change. Having the ability to launch satellites here in Scotland will enable the expansion and enhancement of Earth observation and environmental data. And that's something that is good for everyone. Of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals set by the United Nations, data from satellites plays a critical role in 13 of those goals and makes a contribution to the remaining 4. 35 of the 45 essential climate variables defined by the heads of UN climate change are measured from space. I recognise the need to raise awareness of the value of satellite data to those sectors who have not yet grasped the benefits it could bring them. And I'm sure that this series will go a long way to advance this understanding and generate opportunities for both the public and private sectors. Furthermore, we are undertaking research into this area to explore opportunities to bring this to life through the creation of a set of use cases for the public and private sectors, a further demonstration of how seriously we in Scotland consider the potential for space to change and bring added value to our lives and jobs. The Space and Geospatial Pavilion provides further demonstration of the space sector's responsible approach, taking the lead on its own sustainable future. I hope that this event will offer opportunities for collaboration across public and private sector, spark new connections, facilitate the sharing of ideas, and realise the power of innovation in tackling the climate emergency. I would like to take this opportunity to thank KTN, all the speakers and panellists, as well as all those who are participating today. I wish you all a successful and productive couple of weeks, and I look forward very much to hearing about the positive outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivan McKee. I'm absolutely delighted now, though, to welcome Alicia Curated, who's the CEO of KTN, who's with us from Edinburgh, where the sun always shines.
It does always shine here.
It does always shine. I always think maybe Edinburgh is the best place to be for COP, actually, rather than Glasgow. I think Glasgow might be, it's going to get pretty chaotic. Hey, listen, I just thought it'd be really useful if you could, just a very sort of brief outline about what KTN does and who you are and what your values are.
Thanks so much to Alice and Suzie, and thank also to Luca for giving that brilliant introduction. I feel super inspired about this event. So Luca really covered it. You know, we we are here, our purpose is to connect for positive change, right? What a great phrase, right? But that's about bringing together businesses to talk to other businesses, to talk to academics, bringing policymakers, funders as well, together to drive innovation. So to create new ideas, new services, new products that will really make positive change. And we've got a great team of people right across the country. And Luca and Andy, who's also doing this today, are examples of those people who are really driving all those connections.
Good. And I suppose the key word that we're sort of throwing around a lot today, which we're going to hear more about, is collaboration. So I wanted just to talk a little bit more about that, I suppose, within the context of COP as well, and what KTN do.
That's a massive question. So
yeah, and you've got 4 minutes. That's all you've got. So
I mean, we've seen this, haven't we, in COVID, right? And we've seen that when you need to come up with new ideas, when you need to challenge thinking, whether that's short term, like, you know, we all work together to get ventilators, to get a vaccine to the globe, right? So when we work together, we absolutely make change happen more quickly, and we bring new ideas to the system quickly. But really importantly, for something like COP26 and climate change, and something that we value so much at KTN, and everyone here will value, is that future, the big challenges that are facing the whole globe. How do we solve those? We can't do it with what we're currently doing. We can't do it with necessarily current research or current innovation that's happening. We have to be exchanging ideas, whether that's across sectors, whether that's across global boundaries as well. So working internationally is really important, but also local communities, you know, like bringing local communities together of innovators and activists and all different people on a local level.
Well,
collaboration,
absolutely.
I've got to say this, just collaboration has just been such an important part of my whole career, and it's absolutely at the heart of what we do at KTN in this event.
Yeah, and actually it sounds a bit like we need some sort of culture change to go from sort of a competitive state to a more collaborative state. So maybe you can talk a bit about sort of how we bring that about.
Oh, Suzie, you're speaking to my heart. Well, I think this is one of the biggest changes that needs to happen with the way that we do politics, actually, but the way we do everything, is thinking much more about how we work together, changing our cultures so that we're thinking about collaborating, sharing, rather than competing all the time. That's absolutely how we will get solutions more quickly to everybody. So I really hope we can see that. And the way Luca introduced the event today, that is exactly the spirit that we're coming into these 11 days, and the spirit that we want to see at COP26.
Just to finish up, I'm interested in what you think a successful COP would look like, because obviously it's very different to Paris. We're not signing a treaty here. You know, we don't have that same, you know, that same goal, that same focus. I'm wondering what you think the success might look like.
So I think it's really hard to measure this. Sorry, my dog's having a dream in the background.
That's okay.
That's
the best intervention ever. It's like, sorry, the dog's dreaming.
It would be just fantastic if at every level, so personal in people's hearts and daily lives, right? For every organisation, like all the organisations that are involved today, but also at high level on politicians and policy level, if we could be embracing climate change, embracing trying to solve it, embracing our role, whether it's as an individual, whether it's an organisation, whether it's as a politician in a government, if we could all come out feeling we are responsible for that, that would be fantastic. And then we all take an action with us to make change.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a good point to depart. I'm going to let you go back and look after your dog.
Well, am I allowed one little comment at the end?
Come on then. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I already mentioned Luca and Andy, and just such a massive thank you to them, but also Anita and Andrea, who've helped organising this, because we talk about collaboration, we talk about connections, but it does not happen without people really caring about this and putting the extra effort in. So just a big thank you to the whole team who've been involved and everyone.
I agree, and I agree, and hopefully everyone who's sort of watching this now has been marvelled at the beautiful front end and how wonderful and streamlined this virtual pavilion is. So Anita, thank you very much. She's behind the scenes. She's done a fantastic job. Alyssa, thank you very much indeed. Hopefully we'll see you around. I know you're off to Glasgow. Listen, have a good time. Go and do amazing things, and we'll see you soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you. So next up, we have Amanda Campbell, and she's from the Satellite Applications Catapult. So welcome, Amanda.
Hi everyone.
Hi there. I think you're in Edinburgh as well now.
Yes, I'm sitting in a travel lodge, waiting to go to Glasgow.
Classy. Hey, we love the travel lodge. Are you going to be going to Edinburgh, to Glasgow at all, or are you standing back in Edinburgh?
No. Going to jump straight into it as soon as I have the time.
Ah, okay. So Amanda, just tell us a little bit about the Satellite Applications Catapult, what it is and what you do.
Yeah, so Satellite Applications Catapult is their ambition is to grow the space sector, and they are trying to create a better world empowered by space technology. And I'm very new to the team, and I'm the new head of Net Zero Satellite Applications.
It's quite a responsibility. It's like, we've just started your job. We want you to solve all our problems. And
actually, Amanda, you didn't start out in the space sector, did you? Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to join this role? Where you started that?
Yes, so I'm not from the space sector. Initially, I was actually from innovation in waste. And I very strangely created a compostable tent when I was a student, went through the startup scene, struggled to get it composted.
Has the Travelodge, I think... I
got quite frustrated with the global focus on recycling and waste, often sometimes to the expense of climate. So jumped fully into climate change, studied net zero strategies, and I joined the Satellite Applications Catapult, because I believe space is the sector which would be able to bring everyone together to scale up solutions and to really accelerate the transition to net zero.
I think, sorry, I apologize if our Wi-Fi went down briefly. Can you hear us okay? Give us a thumbs up, Amanda, if you can hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's funny. It's, I think a lot of people who aren't involved in the space sector or the geospatial sector don't really quite appreciate just how vital space is for understanding the health of the planet. I mean, people look at space and they think, oh, goodness me, billionaires blasting off into space, how that's not sustainable, that's not environmentally friendly. But it really does kind of underpin everything now, our dependence on satellite technology and access to low Earth orbit.
Yes, exactly. So if you can imagine a day if we didn't have satellite or space technology, how would we communicate? How would we pay for things? How would we be having a conference like this right now with data? And it is a bit of an elephant in the room of sending rockets and materials up into space, but it's actually the opportunities and the enabling technologies they can create to help us decarbonize. But we cannot forget that there are emissions in our sector. And just like all the other sectors, we do need to also decarbonize ourselves.
Great stuff. So we've talked a little bit about collaboration and how collaboration kind of is the key to really addressing climate change. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the important collaborations that you see as we look to solve some of the issues that we're facing.
Yeah, so just like the collaboration on this digital pavilion, we're all coming together, we're sharing expertise, sharing case studies, sharing projects that we're working together towards the same common goals. But it won't, COP is just really the start of the journey. And it's really about how we're going to keep this momentum going. And instead of just constantly talking about and sharing these opportunities, how can we implement them at scale? And how can we deliver the best projects and move them forward into large-scale interventions? So which is why for over COP, we are calling for a coalition for the space sector for net zero. So in the chat, I believe Andy is going to be posting a link to that.
Great. Tell us, what does that look like? What does a coalition of the space sector look like? Because there's going to be, one of the criticisms of COP is going to be everyone just says talks and words and things. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so actually I love this because both Greta Thunberg and the Queen both reference that they're a bit fed up with everyone talking about things.
I'm a bit fed up. I'm on, you know.
Exactly. So we are all doing amazing things, but we need to learn from each other. And this COP Digital Pavilion is an opportunity to learn about the amazing things, but we want to keep it going. And by doing that, we want to get together after COP. We want to share our challenges, share our opportunities, and really align the same voice and the same message going forward. We need to share the best practices with each other, learn from each other, and then also co-develop high impact, large solutions, both for our sector, but also for other sectors. And this approach isn't unique to the space sector, like the mining, even religious organizations, universities, retail, lots of different sectors are coming together to address these challenges. And now I'm calling for the space sector and the wider space technology ecosystem to unite and share this as well.
Brilliant. Are you optimistic about the future? It's funny, you know, looking at some of the, you know, the press coverage of COP just in the last day, everyone's really concerned about 1.5 and we're just not going to make 1.5. And it seems to be, there seems to be a lot of pessimism around at the moment. I'm just wondering, you know, pessimism can be really unhelpful sometimes if it just feels inability coming into this new area of the space sector. Do you have a sort of clarity of vision? You can you see a way forward? Can you go, yes, we can do this. This is possible. Or your connection?
I would say I'm pessimistic on 1.5. We aren't doing enough to get there quick enough. But the fact is, we are in this transformative, very, very transformative, pivotal moment. And there's an opportunity now to really change business and create these new opportunities. So even if I'm not optimistic on climate change and where we're going to be and what we're going to achieve, I am optimistic on the opportunities that it's going to create. I believe it's going to create a more just, fair world. There's lots of business opportunities. We're going to be able to grow in exciting areas and more collaboration. So I'm optimistic for the potential and where we can go with it.
Good. Thank you very much indeed, Amanda. Actually, there was a thing that Greta said yesterday. She was on the Andrew Marr show, and she said, it's never too late to do as much as you can. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. We tend to think of it in terms of very binary, either a disaster or success. And actually, it's not. It's very much a spectrum. Hey, Amanda, thank you very, very much. Sorry about our dodgy internet connection. We're sort of in and out. Hopefully the space sector will give us better internet in the years to come.
We can hope.
So we'll try. But thank you very much, Amanda. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we have Andrea Vayner, Chief Climate and Sustainability Officer from the European Space Agency. Welcome.
Hi, Dallas. Hi, Suzie.
Hey, it's lovely
to be here.
Hey, where are you today? You're not in Scotland, I don't think.
No, not yet. I plan to go there on Wednesday, but I am in Paris, actually.
Very well, Paris, that's very good. That's very appropriate. So listen, we just want to, I don't know if you've been listening into some of the conversations we had with Alicia and Amanda, and I suppose we just want to follow on the same sort of themes, but from ESA's point of view. Of course, ESA is such a big player in this sector. Can you just give us a little bit of an outline about what ESA's own sustainable journey looks like going forward?
Yeah, thank you, Dallas. Indeed, ESA is a big player. The European Space Agency is working since decades, I can say since the early 70s, as an intergovernmental organization, which now counts 22 member states and promotes cooperation in space. And space is delivering a lot of data and information to better understand our planet since decades, as I said. Our programs are since years working towards the sustainable development goals of the United Nations and the fight against climate change. And this has been acknowledged very recently by the IPCC report, which is quoting ESA, and is accounting more than 50% of the climate variables as the variables that can be only measured by space. So space is doing a lot, and ESA, through its programs, is doing a lot to measure and the pulse of the planet and to measure the variables that are allowing us to make prediction of the planets.
So maybe you can give us an example of this, perhaps thinking about maybe launching into space and how we're making that a more sustainable endeavor.
Indeed, Suzie, this is a very key point. As was said by Amanda, even though the space sector is crucial to get the information that is needed to work upon and fight against climate change, the space sector is a sector as others that is emitting, and is emitting in the different phases of the projects. So, and here I come. My role in the agency is not only to promote the use of space for the benefit of the planet, but also to reduce the impact on the way we do business, we operate, we produce our satellites. And the one crucial point is for sure the launch itself. So we are working with our industrial players to identify a greener propellant instead of kerosene, of course. We are trying to identify what are the impacts all along the supply chain in the development of space products, but we are also taking care of the European spaceport together with our partner, key partner, who is the French Space Agency, CNES. You must know that, sorry.
So can I just ask, when you're just talking about fuel there, is there a rocket equivalent of SAF? For example, I mean, obviously, you know, we're talking about airlines changing over to SAF. Is there a rocket equivalent? Will that make a difference?
No, there is not yet. There is not yet, but they are our partners, our industrial partners are working on it. It is very close, the aeronautical sector and the space sector. We are having more or less the same use of propellant. It must be said that space so far, without taking into account the new space that is coming into the scene, is a very limited fraction of what is the emission of the aviation sector. Nevertheless, we have to do our job and we have to take care of it. And I was talking about the European spaceport. You know that we have a spaceport in Europe, which is in French Guiana, which is an equatorial zone. And you can imagine how energy consuming is a spaceport in an equatorial zone. Just to give you an order of magnitude, it is the space center, this European spaceport in French Guiana is absorbing 13% of the total energy for French Guiana. So it's a lot of energy that we are using. And this is mostly for cooling down the station. So offices, laboratories, test facilities, and this is a lot. And we have set an objective together with CNES, the French Space Agency, that is that 90% of that energy that is needed for working the European spaceport will be green, will be renewable by 2025. So in 3 years from now. And this is going to be done through the installation of solar farms and biomass units, reusing the heating generated by the cooling system and producing energy.
That's really interesting. I mean, you've been to French Guiana. I mean, and watched the launch. It's interesting actually because you say it's a small part of of the problem because there's not that many launches compared to the aviation industry, for example. But because I suppose they're so visible. It's important because it shows leadership, even if it's not a game changer in itself. The sort of leadership that ESA shows, I suppose, is the important thing here. Indeed,
Dallas, and this is very important all along the supply chain in the European space industry, and this is covering the production of a launch system, the launch itself, and also what is generated after it, so what is generated in orbit. And there is already a system which is called the Space Sustainability Rating System that has been put in place thanks to the promotion given by the World Economic Forum, which is a sort of collaboration. So it's a collaboration, it's a voluntary basis, and this collaboration has counted, of course, the European Space Agencies, but also Airbus as a European company, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and the MIT in the United States. So we have put in place a system to rate, to give a score to emission sustainability. And this score is taking into account many factors, but basically is scoring the capacity of the mission to not generate space debris. Or if those space debris are generated, they are destroyed before becoming dangerous, and they are not remaining in orbit, because this is a main concern. And this is really a collaboration undertaking, and for the moment is on the voluntary basis. But once you have a score for a space mission, this is something that is going to be very important for those that have to buy spacecraft, because they have to be sure that these spacecraft are, let's say, best scored.
Can I just remind everybody, just quickly, that you have the option to ask a question if you'd like to. We're talking about some really interesting topics today. So there's a Q&A box, should be on your screen. Please do feel free to type a question in there, and we'll be asking those questions throughout the session.
I think everyone's shy at the moment. Everyone's just sort of waking up and they're like, come on. So yes, questions, please. Well, it's funny actually, because we're talking about sustainability and we're talking about planet Earth, but obviously, I mean, you've sort of alluded to it there, Andrea, about this idea of low Earth orbit. We need to sort of think about sustainability there and actually think about low Earth orbit and near space, I suppose, as part of Earth. And the more stuff we're sending up, and we're going to have many more satellites being launched into Earth orbit, how to look after that particular area so things aren't crashing into each other, and how do we dispose of things properly? Do you think that point system, is that the way forward? Is that an agreed on idea to clean things up?
Well, and also is making it voluntary the way forward.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Or do we need stronger legislation?
Absolutely. This is going to be a strong barrier against the use of outer space if we do not regulate the use of low Earth orbit, and especially if you do not take care of reducing and minimizing the production of space debris. This will be a very strong barrier against the commercialization of this area. Yeah. I was mentioning. Sorry.
I think more people need to know about this. I mean, I seem to have endless conversations with people in this sector. We talk about the importance of access to low Earth orbit and looking after that particular area of resource. But people just generally don't understand it. My mum doesn't really talk about this kind of stuff. And I think we need to be talking about it. It's funny, I was listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger on Twitter today talking about the importance, if we're talking about sustainability and COP, we need to sell the movie. It's no good just talking about the little bits and pieces and what lens you're using to make the movie and how it was financed. You need to tell the story, and that's really, really important. And I think we need to do that better in the space industry. Sorry.
Amanda was very clear saying that there are many applications, many services that we are currently daily using, that are relying on space. And the space debris are a threat to those services, to those applications. And we can have disruption of services, disruption of applications, only because a space debris is hitting a satellite, and so it's disrupting the service. So this is very important as far as we go through new services and new applications served from space.
Also very timely, we're in a moment where we can make change in this particular area. And so as we're on the cusp of more and more launches, it's a timely thing to talk about. But I think the other thing that maybe we should discuss a little bit is around efforts to model Earth and its environment better. And so I know that you have a project called the Digital Twin Earth Project. And I wonder if you could kind of introduce that a little bit for our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Suzie. This is a very dear project to us, because we have been receiving from decades a lot of data, a lot of information from satellites, from our satellites, from other satellites, from other sources of information. Now, with the new frontier of machine learning and artificial intelligence, we can replicate our planet. We can use all those data, all those parameters, to have a digital twin Earth. So a model on a computer, which is telling us how the Earth is behaving, and will allow us to make prediction of the future and see in real time, moving certain parameters, how the Earth will behave in the coming years. This is going to be a very powerful instrument, which requires collaboration and the common effort of all those that are owners of data. And so they are putting those data in an open way available to create this digital twin Earth, but also to the people that are going to develop application to exploit these digital twiners. And we cannot forget that having a model, a unique model of a representation of Earth, will be very important for decision makers, for scientists and scholars to understand how we can cope better with climate change.
You've introduced this with the European Space Agency context, but is this a project that spans agencies? Are you working across the globe on this project with scientists?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. This is a project that for the moment is discussed within the European Space Agencies, but also with other space agencies and with other actors in Europe. But I'm sure that this is a project that can span everywhere in the world, because every organization that is dealing with space is owner of important data, important geospatial data, important information, imagery that are being captured since years from our planet. And this is essential to have this global modeling of the planet Earth.
What's the sort of time frame of this? Where are you with this project? When are we going to get this amazing sort of second Earth, digital second Earth? When's it going to be ready?
This project is going to be presented next year to the Space Summit. There is a Space Summit that is going to be taking place early in 2022 with high-level representatives of all ESA and European Union member states. And if this is going to get a green light, I think that it will start immediately. And again, it's a matter of gathering this information and exploiting this information into a system that is a replica of the Earth on a computer. And so the timing is very short, I can say.
Andrea, thank you very much. And can I just check, are you going to be at COP? Are you on your way to Glasgow now? And presumably ESA will be well represented there.
Yes, there will be a continuous presence of ESA. ESA is represented in the green zone. We have a stand and an exhibition in the green zone. So I invite everybody to have a look at it. And myself, I will be traveling on Wednesday, and I will be in Glasgow Thursday and Friday this week.
Fantastic. And if people want to find out a little bit more information about ESA more broadly, or perhaps this ESA's sustainable journey, where can we point them?
Well, there is, of course, the ESA website, which is very easy to be remembered, which is www.
I wonder how one would find that.
INT, but you can for sure visit our stand in the green zone, and you can get all the information which is about the ESA programs and the variables and the data information that ESA is providing for measuring the pulse of our planet Earth.
Brilliant. Hey, Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to chat. It's been really, really interesting. And listen, have a really good COP and enjoy yourself and work hard. And I hope it's a great success. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you. Get a job.
Thank you. You know what I need? I need better internet connection from satellite somehow. I think maybe there was a space junk incident.
Maybe we can talk about that.
We are working on this.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Because we keep dropping out. Our internet keeps dropping out.
Yes,
not our fault. It's an ESA problem. I'm just going to blame ESA. Andrea, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Right. So up next, who do we have up next?
Well, we've got, I'm absolutely very excited about this. We've had some terrific guests already, but we now have our first panel discussion. Mm-hmm. Hopefully the internet will be kind and let us facilitate this panel discussion. So we have got, Ros Goodfellow, who's the Deputy Director for Policy Geospatial Commission at the Cabinet Office. Ros, hello, are you there? Can you hear us, Ros?
Hi. Yes.
Hi, thank you very much. Great. Listen, I'm just going to introduce everyone. We've also got Nick Shave, who is the chair of UKspace. I'm sure lots of people know Nick. Hi, Nick. Nice to see you.
Hi, Dallas. Hi, Suzie. Hello, everyone.
We've got Denise Mckenzie, geospatial expert and advisor, and also a board member of the Association of Geographical Information.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, there you are. I'm struggling. I haven't got my glasses on. I'm struggling. The screen on the laptop's really dirty, so I can't. I'm like, is it there lighting?
What are you saying about my laptop? Welcome, Denise. Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Sanger, the UK Space Agency Director for Growth. Hello, Harbisher.
Hi, morning, Dallas. Morning, Suzie. Morning, everyone.
Morning. So we'd like to ask you kind of to introduce yourselves a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, your interest in your involvement in collaborations within the industry more broadly.
Yes, sorry, I should have done that at the beginning.
That's
actually,
okay.
I should have said that. So, Ros, yeah, perhaps if you go first, just a little brief intro.
Sure, thanks, Alice and Suzie. As Dallas said, I'm Ros Deputy Director for Policy at the Geospatial Commission. The Commission is an executive committee of the Cabinet Office. We're responsible for increasing and improving the use of location data across both the public and private sector. In June 2020, we published a UK-wide strategy with the aim to unlock the significant economic, social, environmental benefits offered by location data through 4 specific missions. So developing the policy context, improving the actual data, increasing skills, and driving innovation. I guess I just wanted to start today by making 2 points. One, that location data is already underpinning many climate change mitigations and solutions, and it will continue to be crucial for monitoring, planning for, and delivering a sustainable climate-friendly environment. And then I guess with the focus of today, I just wanted to kind of make the point that the Commission's approach is whole system, open, collaborative. Success will only come through collective effort, connecting the data, the people, the systems. And for the GC, that includes organisations across the nations and regions of the UK, let alone globally and international, with international partners, and in public, private, and third sector will all play important roles. So I guess just, thanks for having me today, and I really look forward to having this discussion with my fellow panelists.
Thank you very much, Ros. Nick from Chair of UKspace, if you perhaps introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what UKspace is up to.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dallas. So as Dallas said, Nick Shave, Chair of UKspace, we're a delivery partner working with the KTN in this COP26 Space and Geospatial Virtual Pavilion. And UKspace is the recognised trade body for the space sector across the whole of the UK. We have 150 company members ranging from large space prime contractors to satellite operators through many mid-cap space companies to an ever-increasing number of innovative SMEs in the sector. In terms of space industry contribution to climate and net zero, many of our company members provide critical Earth observation data from space. Also, as an example of what UKspace does, we enabled the coherent industrial engagement and input into the government over the last 6 months or so in the development of the new National Space Strategy, which was published only a month ago. And the space contribution to net zero was firmly recognised as central in that strategy. So we're really pleased with that. So I'm really pleased to be here today in this virtual pavilion, aligned with COP26. It's being held in Glasgow, as we all know. And Glasgow is one of the hubs of the UK space industry, with more satellites built in Glasgow than anywhere else in Europe. Not many people know that. This is because Glasgow is one of the UK hubs for small and nano satellites. And UKspace member companies like AAC Clydespace and Spire are based there, and they're all contributing to climate data from space. Back to you, Dallas.
Thank you very much. Wow, so shipbuilding we think of in the Clyde, and now we can talk about satellite.
Yeah, I think Nick was right, actually. I think most people don't realise what a hub for space Glasgow actually is, or has become over recent years.
They will do by the end of this session. Yes. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. We've got Denise Mckenzie as well. Denise, hi, Denise.
Hi, everybody. So I guess a bit of background to me. So I chair the Association for Geographic Information. I know we've talked an awful lot today about space, which is a completely vital part of data that we use. AGI, though, I guess represents everybody in the profession that works in geography and looks at geospatial data. So Earth observations are absolutely critical to that. But you also have to look at all of that human data that we collect as well, such as our mobility data. It might be information about how we educate people and where that education happens, or how our cities are working. And so I think from that climate side of things, the breadth of data in geography that we need to have to solve the problems is absolutely huge. So AGI is the professional body for the UK, looking at everybody that's working in that field, whether you're in academia, in your government, in the private sector. And I guess going back to some of those things that Amanda said earlier about collaboration, it's absolutely vital that you have organisations that bring all of those different components together. You know, this solving the climate crisis is not something that just government can do by itself. It's not just the private sector. It's really about putting all of that mix together. I guess useful background to me as well, perhaps for questions too, is I co-authored an international charter recently called the Locus Charter. And that's looking at ethical use and responsible use of our location data. And I think that that's one of those things that's really important to the crux of what we're doing in trying to solve climate issues and climate problems, because we have to look at the data that we've got and make sure that we're using it in the best possible ways to make sure that we're accessing the information that we need to in the right ways when we're doing that as well. So I think there's a huge component here that we need to talk about under collaboration, which is how we responsibly use data for the right reasons and for the public good in what we're doing. So that's probably a good introduction for me.
That is the best introduction. Thank you very, very much, Denise. Terrific. And finally, Harshbir from the UK Space Agency, Director of Growth. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Dallas. Hi, morning, everyone. So I'm Harshbir Sangha. I'm the Director of Growth at the UK Space Agency. And what my role entails, whilst it's growing the space sector in the UK, one of the most critical elements where we are at the forefront as far as Earth observations is concerned, is to try and grow the Earth observation industry and the sector in the UK. Now, you don't need to tell me that. The only way to monitor our absolutely brilliant planet is only through satellites, as far as the whole Earth is concerned. And in fact, obviously, if you ask, and I think Denise just did the right pitch for that, which is if you ask the climate scientists, of all the essential variable climate data, half of it can only be measured through the satellite-enabled data. So my role, the agency's role, is try and make that happen, which is to enable the satellite EO data, which can then benefit the climate agenda as a whole.
Great, thank you so much, Harshbir. I guess my first question to all of you, so feel free to dive in with an answer to this, is a little bit about helping to show people the relevance of this data to them and to the climate, because we talk a lot about satellites taking data, and it seems quite removed maybe from people's everyday lives or their understanding of how it's used. So I wonder if you can give some examples of how geospatial data has been used either for changing people's lives or for climate and sustainability purposes. I'm sure there are loads out there, so feel free to dive in there if you have a good example.
I can probably take that one to start with, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, geospatial is a data type really that's been around since the 1970s. And to a large extent, that's why we know what we know about the climate change in the world. So a lot of our behaviors have changed through understanding geography and location information. Probably one of the best examples is looking at how we track transport data. So, you know, you look at there's sensors in cars now, you've got cameras that are collecting location information. And if you look at things like smart motorways, they've been designed so that they can physically track the movement and location of vehicles and adjust speed and adjust behaviors of humans so that we decrease ultimately the emissions that are coming out of those vehicles and improve the behavior and way that we're doing that. So I think that's just one. But you could look at things like the waste sector, for example, that Amanda talked about earlier. Simply knowing where we're transporting our waste to, where that's being processed, how can we shorten the amount of space we're going to move things from? Can we produce things closer to somewhere else so that we reduce transport costs is another one that we need to look at, and where raw materials are actually moving to. And what's interesting, and it goes back to a comment you made, Dallas, about your mum not kind of, talking about these issues because it's just such a big, complex type space.
My mum's already texted me to say she knows all about it. She's like, what are you talking about? I don't know about it.
Well, hopefully she'll like this one too then. But I think that one of the great things about maps as a tool for change is that they're pictures. They transcend language in a way that enables us to shift our behaviours and to really clearly see where problems are so that we actually alter what we're doing.
Honestly, I think that's such a good point, and we don't talk about that. Just clarity of information is vital. And,
how we present our data is critical.
That's it. Yeah, there's that great quote that says, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And I think when we talk about the Earth and we talk about that spread of the different problems, that picture of the map, that's our place, that's our home, and it evokes that sort of emotional response to want to look after it.
It's that classic image. It's the famous Apollo 8 image from 1968 when we saw the Earth, and we always talk about that image, but it is that thing of if you can sell the story. And actually, an image like that, seeing the Earth for the very first time as a ball hanging in space, it does something a lot more than just being bombarded with facts and statistics and language, that kind of thing. So yeah, excellent point. Thank you.
I'd love to come in as well, just on really reinforce a lot of what Denise has said. But where questions are all around us, where are the emissions coming from? Where is most vulnerable from the impacts of climate change? Where to put the wind farms, the solar panels, the tidal dams, not just necessarily maximising their energy collection, which of course we want to, but actually minimising the disruption that can result from putting a wind farm in the middle of the sea and ships having to detour around them. That's actually an idea that we're funding EMU Analytics through one of our innovation funds at the moment. And I completely agree with Denise on transport. We looked at kind of some of the things that are already in place, but even looking forward, location data will be absolutely at the core to an effective transition to electric vehicles, where to put the charge points, and again, plotting electric vehicle journeys that minimize energy consumption, maximizing that battery power. Just for a few other examples, it's all around us.
Thank you. I'm quite interested actually in how, in sort of where kind of government sort of plugs into all this. Like what, obviously, you're not doing the science, but how do you sort of legislate what happens? How do you decide, okay, we're going to do it like this?
So, I mean, we collaborate, we listen and we talk, we identify where the problems are. And as you can imagine with data, there's the systems that we've set up over hundreds of years don't always necessarily work for the digital society that we're living in today. So we identify those blockers, and where needed, we make changes to ensure that data is accessible, that the standards ensuring it's interoperable, people can communicate and work together to solve these challenges, which everyone said, government can't do alone.
Great, thank you so much. I think, Nick, you have a point to add here.
Yeah, I was just going to come in just quickly. Dallas mentioned Earthrise, that amazing picture from Apollo 8. I think that's one of the things that really got me into the space industry, actually. So really good to remember that. I've got it on my wall behind me, by the way. So I can always look at it.
I think it's the most used image in PowerPoint presentations. I think it is.
Just coming on Susie's question, I was thinking in terms of examples, real world examples of how we've used this data and how it can reduce climate emissions. One thing I thought about from the space, I'm trying to identify an example, and a good one I think is both using space and geospatial data, is a program called IRIS, which is a program between European Space Agency and Andrea's organisation and UKspace member company Inmarsat. And it's part of the Single European Skies initiative. And that's putting in place a system which will use satellite communications and satellite navigation derived geospatial data to enable much better and more efficient aircraft routing, and therefore reducing carbon. And I mean, these are the sorts of initiatives that we see in the space sector that we can work more on together, not just the climate monitoring, but then reducing the impacts of climate going forward.
That's great. And Harshbir, maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of the government role in some of this as well. You're interested in growth in the sector more broadly.
Yeah, so I'll probably talk from the kind of global influencing as it were. That's another role that we in government play quite a bit. So we heard from colleagues in the European Space Agency. So we're working with the European Space Agency on a number of Earth observation programs, including Copernicus, where when the new missions are being designed, developed, and from the conception itself, we're at the forefront of actually using our knowledge from our industry base in the UK
Can you just tell us what Copernicus is for those who may not be familiar with Copernicus?
Absolutely. Copernicus is it's an EU space program, but it's an Earth observation program. It's the biggest Earth observation program across the globe. It's got 6 Sentinels at the moment, 6 missions, but it's expanding and trying to expand to 12 new missions. And the UK, as kind of founding members of the European Space Agency, has been at the forefront of this program right from the onset. So we are, as government, not just focusing on, I guess, the usability of the data at the other end. It's also on the other side trying to focus what kind of data the users need, what kind of data we, as users of satellite technology, need. We work with the climate scientists, and then we support the decision making at the top table across the globe, be it on the Copernicus mission or broadly across the world, where Earth observation missions are currently being designed and conceptualized, either through our membership of the community of Earth observation satellites, which is I think just over 60 agencies working together on EO satellites across the globe. So there's a broader piece the government does, as opposed to just focus on a particular data.
You raise a really interesting point there, actually, which is that we have a certain amount of data available and we need to work out what we can do with that data. But actually forward planning to think about what data we need and how we're going to collect that data is another sort of huge part of what needs to be done moving forwards, I think. So my question to sort of all of you more broadly is around data, because there's data collected all the time. You know, my mobile phone knows where I am. My car probably is some point is going to know where I am. And we talked a little bit about car data and journeys and monitoring all of these things. I'm interested in the availability of that data to the public, to scientists, to use this geospatial data to solve and answer some of these questions. And I wonder whether sometimes there's some issues around personal privacy relating to my data and actually making that data available for the public good and for the good of answering these major questions. I'm sure all of you have thoughts on that. So, you know, please feel free to dive in there. Denise, I think.
Yeah, I probably should tackle this one, given it's something I've looked at for the last 2 years worth of research here. So it's a lovely segue. I think one of the challenges we've got now is actually we have so much data that trying to make a lot of sense out of the noise is becoming challenging. So I think that there is definitely a responsibility we have to only really collect what we need to be. I think we've been through a bit of an innovation era where we just kind of collect lots because we can. And I think one of our principles in the Locus Charter is to kind of really sit sensibly and look at your project and say, what do we actually need to collect about these people? And how intrusive do we need to get into people's lives that are in there? I think privacy is always going to be an issue when it comes to location. Your personal information about your locations and journeys is so unique to you and so identifiable in what you're doing. You know, where your kids go to school, where I shop, where I drive my car, where I go to work. You know, they all paint kind of a picture about me. What I would say is that as technologists, we have such a responsibility to get better with our transparency on what we're doing with that information. One of the biggest things, if you look at, you know, the issues around Cambridge Analytica, you look at some of the issues around the use of law enforcement location data recently. There's lots of people, and actually probably tracing apps, perfect example last year with COVID. A lot of people, the uptake of tracing apps actually wasn't that great around the world, and they didn't sort of have the effect that people wanted. And with a bit of exploration into that, some of that is around trust between the citizens and governments and big business in this. So I think that there's lots that's available. Some of that's open data, some of that's closed data. I think, you know, there'll always be need for both. But what we're not doing as well as we could be is being transparent about what we're using people's data for, what decisions we're using it for. And part of that's really important because we need the information to make the decisions. So I don't want everybody to get freaked out with their mobile phone and switch off their location.
It's quite hard not to get freaked out, though. You mentioned Cambridge Analytica. I don't know, I'm sure you all saw the Mark Zuckerberg, Nick Clegg video of the metaverse that was sort of doing the rounds the other day. You know, this is a kind of quite a big subject that's worrying us all.
It is.
You mentioned the Locus Charter. Actually, can you go into a little bit more detail about what that is, what it means? It's not something I've heard of.
Not something I've heard of. So it was a charter that was launched in March this year. It's a collaboration of a whole bunch of different organisations. So you've got AGI is one of them, the Royal Geographical Society, the OGC that was mentioned earlier, the International Standards Body for Geospatial, the American Geographical Society, and a sort of host of other commercial organisations, etc., that are there. Basically, it's 10 principles, and it's about trying to get better on some of those issues of what responsible use of location data looks like, what ethical use of it is, how do we protect vulnerable groups or vulnerable places in the world in how we represent data. But I think really importantly, it goes back to that thing about talking about your mum and other people that are around us. This is so complicated, this problem. It's so complicated, the data and information. But we're the experts that know how to explain it. Can we do that better? And I think we have a responsibility to do that.
I think you do. And I think, it's the speed of change. Human beings, we are quite resistant to change, I think. But once change does happen, we're also really, really adaptable and we get used to things very, very quickly. But being able to sort of talk about this in a way that doesn't sound like some kind of dystopian nightmare. Well,
because we're asking people to make changes in their everyday lives. And so we have to justify asking them to make those changes and show them that they can make a difference in what they're doing. So yeah, well, okay, on that, what's the sort of government, how does the government deal with that? How does the government sell this idea in a way to the public that stops the people's freaking out and panicking?
Happy to come in here. I mean, we in Geospatial Commission have a commitment to produce guidance next year for businesses to do exactly what Denise was talking about, which is help them to build that transparency, to have that communication channel that will enable them to maximize the use for all the public good reasons that we've been talking, the environmental benefit, whilst maintaining that confidence with the public. So, mobile data is a really great one. And for me, the key distinction here is between individual tracking, which is of course allowed, but under very strict laws for crime security purposes, versus aggregate data. So that's where you can't identify any one individual, but we understand packaging, how people are moving in general. And that information is crucial to enable us to do those transport changes, to do all of those things, but giving people confidence that aggregated data doesn't enable anyone to see where me as an individual citizen is at any one point. So these are some of the kind of communications that we're all working to try and explain. Hope that helps.
That's really interesting, and I kind of wonder if you take any lessons from the way that the government sort of has talked about the COVID over the last 18 months, and the way that that interface between the public and government and public and science. It's kind of a messy boundary, and I wonder if you've sort of looked at that and thought, okay, well, what can we learn? How can we build trust? Because ultimately, it comes down to trust, doesn't it?
Yeah, trust and confidence. It's having that confidence that your data, when it is being collected, is going to be used in the right way, and not going to be used in a way that you're not aware of and you're not happy with. So for sure, from a location data perspective, we've actually just finished a public dialogue with some experts in this dialogue to better understand where the public's concerns really are. And interestingly, once they are explained, about aggregate data, the key thing is as Denise said, transparency. If we can explain it clearly to them, not in 10,000 pages, no one reads those terms and conditions.
I never do. Yeah. I've got over 5,000 unread emails in my inbox, but that's a different.
You have other issues, yeah.
Harshby, you had a point. You were going to come in there.
I think I agree with everything that Rosa just said. I think the transparency is quite key to the whole thing. But when it comes to, I guess from talking purely from not the government perspective, from a UK Space Agency perspective. We've also another view, which is, so if you're having the satellite data, and I'm talking about Earth observation data over here, is to make it readily and freely available for all to use, which is quite a critical element of trying not just grow the Earth observation industry, but have the right climate variables available. So I think there is a distinction between personal data in some ways, and the distinction in terms of what actually data is quite beneficial to us, literally as a planet as a whole, in the EO data that is quite beneficial and the climate scientists needed freely and readily available on daily purposes. So I think I'll just make the distinction in terms of, you know, the personal data and what the EO data as a whole is.
Well, you're absolutely right. And we just have a question that came in actually via the Q&A talking about this, about how we can make geospatial capabilities available, reliable and accessible to more industries and creative innovators. So, you know, how do we go about doing that? I mean, I'm guessing some of the data that's useful is collected not by government organizations, but by all manner of organizations. So how do we promote sharing of these data sets?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a collective endeavor from government, from the, kind of the broader public sector, I would say, rather than just the kind of the civil service sector. But there is also a range of private companies who are doing an absolutely brilliant work. You know, you talk about Planet, you talk about GSG Sat, who are doing work in regards to methane emissions. I guess the main thing is, I guess my message is that we all need to come together to form and collaborate. I think data is one where everyone can collaborate for the right benefits for the user on the other side. And I think we've got somewhere to go. I think we're all probably custodians of our data in a different way, but I think we just need to open up the channel and discussions to make sure there's a seamless flow of data where the climate scientists can support and work on the modeling that we need. So I think there's a bit of a gap between having the data and the modeling that needs to happen, which is probably the next step we need to do.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your questions that are flowing in at the moment. Thank you very much indeed. Keep them coming. If you've got any questions for our panel. Let's have a little look here. This is from Charlotte. Hi, Charlotte. I'm interested in adaptation and resilience. How do we best provide widely available, intuitive, early warning information and long-term climate risk info? It'd be great to hear some ideas on climate data portals. Anyone? Anyone fancy having a go at that? No.
I can probably shed a little bit on this. I think that part of this is about shifting, I think, from our thinking. I think one of the great things we do as a geospatial sector is to think a lot about the technology and a lot about the data and don't think about it in terms of the problems. And I think that what we need to do is really shift our focus to think problem first. And so when it comes to looking at these early warning systems and the information, that's all local, you know, whether I'm a small island developing nation or I'm, you know, the UK or I'm in Canada. So I think part of it is how do we build connected data platforms and connect it? It's not just one portal. It's about how do we make sure that there is lots of different data. And I've heard people talk here about interoperability. I used to work for OGC. And a lot of what those spaces are about is how do we keep producing data in the most usable formats and make it the most accessible that we possibly can. And it goes a little bit to the other comment about creative industries and adding that, you know, what we have to do is just make it easier and easier and easier for data to be turned into evidence bases for decision making, I think is the most critical part there. And there's a lot of tools now that we can start doing that, but you just got to focus on constantly making it easy.
Maybe I can come in with an example as well, if helpful, which is I think there's actually a latter session on the virtual pavilion on the National Underground Asset Register, which is a programme being driven by the Geospatial Commission to build an authoritative digital map of the pipes and cables below our feet. We don't actually have one at the moment in the UK, but the key thing for me here is that we're working with a consortium of technology, geospatial companies, all the utility and telecommunication companies from across the UK, as well as local authority and local transport networks to build this platform. I mean, ultimately, that the platform will make digging under our roads safer for everyone, but it will reduce congestion, there'll be shorter times for digging up those roads. But, you know, as we talked about earlier, it'll also underpin that move to electric vehicles, making it more efficient that we build that infrastructure, the charge points that's going to be needed. So, you know, that's just one example of where, you know, we have a problem and we're doing that use case to build that data in a secure and safe way, but making sure that it is accessible and can be used when it's needed.
I think it's remarkable that we don't have a list of all the underground assets in the UK. Actually.
Well, I think the fact that the roads are always dug up is good evidence of the fact that we don't know what we're doing and we're making it up as we go along.
Thanks, Suzie. I was just going to come in with a sort of space example in this area, particularly around reliable early warning data and from the climate perspective. You know, we've, as Andrea highlighted, I think earlier, the ESA program, a very comprehensive program, and also Hushbear with Copernicus. We in the UK have contributed to many satellites in the Earth observation area, and we have many world-class scientists here as well, generating instruments on those missions. And that ecosystem of working closely with the academic partners is really key, so that we can develop things further. Great example here is an NPL, National Physical Laboratory-led mission called Truths that we're building now in the UK. It's a collaboration with ESA, but mainly an UK mission, and that will put a low Earth orbit-based climate laboratory in space. And what that will do, it's actually a cryogenic radiometer, and I'm not the expert in how that works, but it's a very
that's your department, Suzie. What's one of those?
Keep going.
We'll just pretend we know. We
don't have a huge amount of time.
Well, basically, it's calibrating all of our climate observations from many other missions, and it's going to give us an order of magnitude improvement in the reliability of that data for the long term. So that's one of the space contributions that we're making, that Truths mission for the future.
And you bring up a really good point, actually, which is that we have disparate data sets that go back at extended time periods made by different instruments in different places. And actually, as we've talked about earlier, bringing them all together is important. And one thing that needs to happen, is, as you mentioned, is baselining this data so that it's comparable and we can use it appropriately. So that's a really, really good point.
Thank you. Listen, we're going to coming to the end of our session, and first of all, I want to say thank you for all your thoughts and all the information. And I hope it's been useful if you're watching this online, wherever you are. I just, as COP begins, as we're on sort of day 2 of COP, I'm just interested in what your ambitions are from where you are particularly positioned, what you would like to see, or what you would consider to be a successful COP. And I'm just going to, whoever wants to jump in with that rather vague and open-ended question, but does anyone want to have a go at that?
From it goes to that public trust and confidence in data more generally, and of course from my perspective, location data, but helping people to understand that actually there is safe ways that them sharing even data about themselves personally, but in a regulated fashion, will be essential for us solving this crisis. So I think that would be a massive win for me.
Denise.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things about these amazing events, they're huge, and we see all these world leaders and CEOs of big companies and all this, but at the end of the day, none of this the change isn't going to happen unless it reaches down to that local level. So for me, success is going to be, yes, the agreements at that national scale, but then looking, I guess, in the weeks, months, years after what happens out of this conversation and how that information gets down to, me, my neighbor, my mum, my family back in Australia, in such a way that we all make the right changes, that we push the commercial companies to change their behaviors by our consumer choices, that we, elect officials that are going to actually support the right changes that need to happen in the world, and that we fund, I think, critically down into those local spaces so that the local people that know what's going on can make the changes that are necessary. And to me, that would be, I think that is absolutely critical to moving everything forwards.
Thank you, Denise. Any other thoughts on that? We've got one more question.
Hushbear.
Hushbear, thank you.
No, I was just going to back to points that Denise and Roz have just made, I think from my perspective, or our perspective in the space agency, I'm not going to sit here and say, that people understand the role that space plays in kind of measuring and monitoring the Earth. But I'll probably the point that Roz was making, which is people understanding and everyone understanding the role data plays and what role they have to play in supporting and exploiting the data where they can. I think that's quite a critical element. So it's going down the tiers in terms of you have a big kind of intervention at the top, but it's actually what is the role that you play in supporting that big ambition, which obviously will probably come out over the next couple of weeks and if not already there through the Paris Agreement.
Thank you very much. We've just got one question that's come in from Hazel. We sort of touched on this a little bit, but I'll read it out. With opportunity comes responsibility. Freely and readily available data, as well as being used for good, can be used for harm. How do we strike the balance?
Well, and that in essence gets to the point of this conversation, which is we've all been discussing, and your summaries just then were perfect in talking about how individuals need to understand how they can contribute, that we won't misuse their data. And this is kind of emphasizing that point, I guess, isn't it? It's just that actually we've had some issues around lack of trust, around lack of responsibility with data, and now we have to rebuild that trust. And Denise had a great point at a local level, at the level of your family, my family, our friends. And I guess part of this really is about communication.
Yeah.
How do we communicate this to people? We have this massive COP conference. If you talk to someone on the street, they might not really know what's going on.
It's all about communication.
Yeah.
It's all about how you sell the movie. And it's funny, just looking at social media today, there was so much stuff about, Joe Biden having 85 cars in his thing, which may not be, may not in the scheme of things be important, but it just sends messages. And we're, and getting trust across a whole, large group of people. We've seen this with the pandemic, how fragile trust is. And if you don't trust the messenger, you're not going to trust the message. And we need psychologists working, I think,
But also, I think maybe all of us have a responsibility to communicate with people about how they can make a difference and how their data will be used. Perhaps it actually comes down to scientists having more conversations around exactly this topic to explain these points more clearly so that there is a trust that can be built.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, listen, we're kind of going to wrap it up, I think. We're running out of time. But can I just say a huge thank you to all of you for joining in and for explaining what you do and why COP is important. It's been really, really interesting. So thank you very, very much indeed. Are you all going to COP, by the way? Is anyone actually going to be going and doing things and events? Denise is shaking her head.
No to Roz, no to Nick.
The DC is, but not myself. But yeah,
okay.
Your representatives.
Brilliant. With the space and geospatial green pavilion area. So.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you to Roz. Thank you, Nick, Denise, Harshbir. Thank you very, very much for your time. And hopefully, if people do have more questions, if you're watching this online and you do have more questions, then keep sending them in, and hopefully we'll be able to get them to the right people. But thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, right. Who have you got next, Suzie?
We actually have a short message now from Chris Jackson, the head of commercial markets and sustainability. So we're going to play you just a short clip, a short message from Chris now.
Hi everyone. So first I'd like to thank the Knowledge Transfer Network for the opportunity to speak with you today, albeit virtually. My name's Chris Jackson from Esri UK. Esri is a global technology and services company with a singular focus on furthering geographic science to help governments, scientists, businesses and community organisations to better manage our world. Our software platform for delivering this is called ArcGIS. And I'm quickly going to outline why we believe that geospatial technology, or GIS, is a fundamental technology for climate action. It's arguably never been more important for us to rapidly understand what's going on where, why, and what to do about it. And I've used this slight adaptation of the knowledge hierarchy coined by Richard Saul Wurman as knowledge preceding action to make the point that since geography is the science of our world, a geographic approach to the climate crisis gives us a unifying framework and context to understand the interconnectedness of everything, especially the relationship between the natural world and the man-made world. And it's therefore fundamental to how we understand, plan and act on this potential existential threat. The good news is that what we've seen in recent times is an evolution in the use of geospatial technology, from the traditional system of record for the storage, curation and analysis of geospatial content, to its use as a platform for collaboration. In this way, GIS is acting as a system of insight, giving a range of tools to different user communities to undertake a variety of tasks, as well as a system of engagement, a means of sharing information, knowledge and collaboration. Another evolution has been the rise of geospatial digital twins. Although we've actually been creating digital twins since the late 1960s, starting with the modelling of the natural world to now modelling human interaction with the natural world. Hence the emergence of geodesign and geobim, utility network and infrastructure modelling, to very advanced near real-time human movement modelling within a city information model. And these digital models are now incredibly powerful thanks to adjacent technologies like the Internet of Things, the sensor web, telematics, satellite imagery, machine learning and AI, modelling progressively from 2D to 3D, 4D and onwards. And again, the use of geography and mapping as that common context and framework to organise, interconnect and integrate all of these models is what enables more holistic understanding and faster decision making. That same geospatial knowledge infrastructure is, in the form of engagement hubs, also advancing the collaboration pattern between governments, organisations and citizens. It's opening up participation in the community. It's empowering citizens to do GIS themselves, leveraging community content and crowdsourcing. Again, using maps and digital information as a perfect vehicle to understand, analyse and plan collaboratively. And geospatial technology has never been easier to integrate, and interoperability is accelerating. Esri's system is designed to be open from the ground up, and we've been working to develop ways of ingesting massive volumes of real-time data, leveraging technologies like Kubernetes, and continuing to support the work of the Open Geospatial Consortium. So when we now turn to the global frameworks and tools that are already being used to help with climate change, mitigation and adaptation, I hope you'll acknowledge that they're all deeply interconnected by geography. The 5 capital frameworks and the SDGs, for example, both designed to better help understand the interactions of human activity with the natural world. I particularly like this representation of the SDGs because it better illustrates that interconnectivity, better than a simple table anyway. Likewise, the success of the circular economy could depend upon the use of some form of geospatial digital twin, or multiple integrated twins, because circularity relies upon stakeholder collaboration and engagement, along with the use of a standard framework and taxonomy for passing the information along, helping to create that continuous cycle. And since the circular economy is all about the movement of materials, goods and people, across a variety of networks of spaces and places, all deeply interconnected, well, I hope you'd also acknowledge or agree that a digital twin must be made geospatially aware. And finally, to some of the practical tools that are being used to plan, transform and measure organisational climate impact. All these likewise deeply interconnected by geography, and therefore would benefit from this same unifying framework for understanding and collaboration. And here's some great example of the successful use of geospatial technology and a geographic knowledge infrastructure in Glasgow, the host city of COP26. This is Glasgow's citizen engagement and open data sharing platform, enabling all their stakeholders to find and use key data sets about the city, contribute to development plans, and encourage participation between the council, local businesses and citizens. So with that, I thank you for your attention. I hope you have an enjoyable, successful and collaborative conference, and I'm just really sorry I can't be there to enjoy it with you. Thank you.
And thank you so much to Clive for that, to Chris for that recorded message there. The next message that we have for you actually is really interesting because it builds on what we were discussing earlier. And we mentioned this National Underground Asset Register, the fact that we're trying to build up a register of the assets that are under our feet here in the UK and how we can use that. And so that's what our next speaker is here to discuss. We have Clive Sermon-Wells, who's recorded a message for us. He's the Innovation Partnerships Manager from Northumbrian Water.
Hello, I'm Clive Somermods from Northumbrian Water, and I'm going to be telling you about a collaboration between regional utilities, local authorities and government that led to the commissioning of NUAR, the National Underground Asset Register, a map of what's under the ground for the purposes of safer excavation work. Based in Durham, Northumbrian Water provide 1 billion litres of water every day to our customers across the north of England, Essex and Suffolk. About 4 million excavations are believed to be dug in this country every year. In fact, Northumbrian Water are responsible for over 100,000 of them. In order to keep the water flowing to our customers, we need to make excavations. If anything delays the job, then it will result in unnecessary traffic congestion, emissions and pollution. Common causes of delays are things like not being able to find a buried asset, accidentally hitting somebody else's service, that's called a utility strike, or finding something unexpected in the ground. To counter these risks, utility companies pull together maps and plans from various sources, and this process is very labour intensive, costly and time consuming. You're probably surprised to hear that that there isn't or hasn't been a single system where you can view and interrogate all the buried assets on one screen. But for years, nobody seems to have been able to attract so many diverse players into a single platform. It's a 20-year-old problem, really. But what a number of people around the Northeast region and country across the country seemed to envisage was a system more like this, where everything could be seen in a single view, where a field worker could interrogate individual services and see what kind of voltages and pressures they might be working around, but something that was instantly available to those who need it to pan and zoom around that simply did not exist. So at the Northumbrian Water Innovation Festival in 2018, we decided to try to change this. During the Innovation Festival, I'll say a few words about this. We take over the Gosforth Park Racecourse in Newcastle in 2018, their marquee village, and we ran a series of design sprints on different subjects and data hacks, what we call a year's worth of work in a week. And each sprint will tackle a different problem and has its own tent and a high-profile sponsor, in this case, Ordnance Survey. And we metaphorically lock everybody in the room for a week. So when innovating, it's crucial to get the right people into the tent for the right organisations. And we brought together private utility companies, local authorities, contractors, and within those organisations, people who plan excavations, but also the people who actually dig the holes in the street. So I guess the first sort of key point I wanted to make was getting the right people is absolutely crucial, but it's the passionate people within the organisation and not necessarily the person with the right job title. A second step was to break down organisational and sector barriers and get people working as one team as we progressed. So for the first 2 days, as we broke down the problem and potential solutions, we grouped people by their professions, so they worked with their counterparts in other organisations. This broke down barriers and got people working as one team. So the key point here is to focus on the shared objectives and forget about the organisational and sector boundaries. By the end of the event, we'd gotten to know each other pretty well and built up a great sense of trust. We were also infused, we made a pledge to continue to work together as a consortium of local authorities, utility companies, Ordnance Survey. We actually physically stood at the front of the room and made the pledge to continue working on this together, had a photograph taken. We developed a simple 3-stage roadmap very shortly afterwards for how we might progress the project over 3 years, and we were soon joined by the Geospatial Commission, part of the Cabinet Office representing central government, all playing as one team. So third key learning really is building trust between the partners. We did that by having this start-off event, kick-off event, and a shared vision. The thing that characterises the Northeast Pilot Consortium was the level of shared vision between the organisations involved. Those passionate people sold the idea internally to their senior teams, and this simply fuelled the energy to collaborate. I wanted to focus on the early stages and the launch pad, but to complete the story, I'll have to say a few words about central government support. funding 2 regional year-long pilots supported by a dedicated and committed team. The Geospatial Commission team have been the driving force from this point, bringing together the stakeholders, over 650 of them across the country, in both the Northeast and London, and right across the country, to carry on the project from pilot into a tender for a national platform, and now the delivery of that platform. I'm out of time, so I'll leave you with a reminder of the key ingredients we use to enable our success where previous attempts had floundered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clive, for that message. Now, very exciting, our next speaker, Federica Bietta, is at COP. You're our first speaker we've had today who's actually in the throng of COP. Federica, before we start, I want to know what the atmosphere is like. How is it? Are you enjoying yourself? What's the vibe?
Today is nuts. Today is simply nuts.
Why is it nuts?
A lot of going on. All the leaders are here, and so it's pretty frantic. Everyone following their prime minister, head of states. So there is a lot of on that. But hopefully we'll get soon to work, besides all of that.
Well, listen, thank you very, very much for joining us. Federica, I forgot to introduce you properly, so I'm going to do that now because I'm an idiot. You're the Managing Director of the Coalition for Rainforest Nations. So I know you've got a few slides, which we'll go through the slides first, I think, and then we'll chat afterwards. But just give us a bit of background about what it is that you do and why you're at COP today.
Sure. Coalition for Rainforest Nations started in 2005 from a simple need. Rainforest country were chopped down, and the developed country were saying to rainforest countries, stop to cut your trees. And actually the World Bank was offering 70 million one-time payment to the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea to stop completely its logging concession. The Prime Minister said, I would love to stop my logging concession, but I make almost 300 million per year. And so you understand the 70 million one-time payment doesn't work. There are in Papua New Guinea about 9 million people, of which 8 live in the forest. They depend from the forest, but they get their medicine and all of that. And nobody said, if it's a revenue stream that I can keep my forest standing and I can still get them educated, get their medicine, happy to do it. And so that started the quest with Ambassador Kevin Conrad. We were doing study at Columbia University and said, well, how can we give economic value to the forest so they're more valuable standing instead of chopped down? And then we understand there was the UNFCCC. At that time, I had no idea what it was. And now I'm on my 15th COP. And so they were giving a value to the carbon in that. And they said, okay, we have the solution. The forests have a carbon. You cannot chop down and get paid for it. But actually, you understand that developing countries were excluded by that. Only developed countries could benefit from that. And everybody understood that, agreed that was unfair. So we said, okay, let's change the rule. It will take a couple of years because everybody agrees, and that was 2005. But we did change the rules. Rainforest country came together for the first time. So others, 50 countries joined Papua New Guinea, and they said that we have not caused the climate problem, but we are willing to be part of the solution if there is a positive incentive. And then we negotiate REDD+, we started, and it was captured in 2015 into the Paris Agreement, and is the first mechanism under the Paris Agreement that comprehends the full sector of the forest.
Brilliant. That's a really, really clear introduction. Thank you so much. Now, Federica, I know you've got some slides which are going to sort of help you expand on that, and hopefully we're going to be able to do, using the magic of goodness knows what, slides plus live from COP. Is this going to work?
Let's bring up the slides. And,
do we have slides? Oh, look at that.
There we
go. Internet in COP.
There you go.
I don't see them yet, but
we're going to try that.
No, I don't
first,
see them.
I've actually got your slides in front of me, so okay. I can sort of describe them. Your first.
Oh, can you see them now, Federica?
Oh, there we go. Here we are.
I cannot.
Okay, you need to be, I think if you go on gallery view, you'll be able to see them. So perhaps if you click gallery view, you'll be able to see your slides popping up and yourself. Is that working?
I've seen you guys, but just give me 1 second.
That's okay.
Okay, I see them now. Okay, if we go on the next one, please. Yes. So you see the picture, that's the IPCC slides. We have to reduce, okay, now I see them good. So we have to reduce, we have to do a nosedive to reduce climate emissions by 2050 to be carbon neutral. And that we know very clear from the last IPCC reports that is a human-induced emissions that what it causes. So there is not really doubt about this anymore. And so the nosedive that we need to do is massive. If we go into the next slide, the good news is that it's possible to do these reductions. And how? As I was mentioning before, there is the REDD+ mechanism that has been captured into the Paris Agreement and Article 5. As of today, 90% of the world rainforests are part of the mechanism. Over 60 countries are engaging with this mechanism. And you know what? The even better good news, as of today, we had about 7 gigatons of reductions from this mechanism. So this is massive. On the next slide, though, we see what are some of the issues.
Can you just explain what REDD means? Because I don't think it's a term that a lot of people will have heard of before, or as a, what does REDD mean?
Yeah, sorry for the economy that we use. REDD is reduction from emission from deforestation. And when we started, it was only RED, so reduction from emission from deforestation. But then there were African countries in particular, they say, hey, in our country, we have degradation. We need to add this word, and so become REDD. And then India came and a few other countries as well, Guyana, and they say, hey, we are conserving our forests. We have not destroyed them. And so the plus stands for and the role of conservation, sustainable management of forests, and enhancement of forest carbon stocks. And so the idea is really that we don't reward only the country that stopped the emission from deforestation, but also the one that reduced their degradation and the one that are conserving and increase their carbon stock. And so all countries are very comprehensive on this, on the mechanism. And so when we look at the next slides, the good news that the reductions are real, are massive at national scale. And after we compare on the right side where we have, the small dot where has been a small subnational project, there is not really comparison between the two. In the past 15 years, small projects were able to reduce only 190 million, while in the same period of time, almost 7 gigatons were reduced by the country. So REDD+ under the Paris Agreement is working. However, the problem is that only 4% of these reductions have been paid to the country. So it's a very tiny amount. And if we go in the next slides briefly, we can also see, well, what does it mean, the REDD+ under the Paris Agreement? Means that the forests are under the national determined contribution of the countries. They need to be part of the national monitoring system and greenhouse gas inventory. And we'll get very soon, guys, to the data, interested also for in our conference here. And so the important things that is a national scale and sovereign backed. And then we need to have part of the global accounting. And therefore, we need to have correspondent adjustment and avoid the double counting. It needs to be part also the REDD+ part of the global stock take. And therefore, we need to target the reference every 5 years decrease the reduction until, we bring it to zero. And then they're under independent review that is called by the UNFCCC with their independent roster of experts. If we go in the next slide, so we talk about few elements, right? So we have the solutions that can act immediately to the global crisis using the forest. And so they need to be part of, we said, the global stock takes. To that to be good, they need to have reliable data, the global stock take. Otherwise, there is no point for all countries to come together if we don't have reliable data. And so also for countries, what does it mean for rainforest countries? It means that they need to have transparent, reliable, consistent and accurate estimate of their emissions reduction and their removals as well. And so we need to have, as we know, we need to have satellite data that they need to be a mix with also ground truthing. They cannot be, separate. It has to be really a match of the two. And then we need to conserve those data that we know it can be very costly, for years to come to be able to conserve. And so that's where also rainforest countries, we need the support, finance, and partnership. And last one, really international cooperation, South, and also with any agency in the geospatial and data will be very important. And as a last slide example, we're proud to say that CFRN is partnering now for a catalytic trial with the Geo and with Imber, with the Brazilian Space Agency, with the Mozambique. We're trying to really to use the big Earth observation data and the maps provided also by Imber from 1990 to 2019, where we use the latest technology with spatial resolution of 30 meters. And in the country of Mozambique. And so that we could have a clear picture wall to wall. And we hope that then these South with Imber Brasilia and Geo, from the UN Space Agency, will be able to replicate in so many other rainforest countries so that, they will have the certainty of the data as much as possible, the transparency, and they will be linked with the global carbon accounting and the goal of 1.5 of the Paris Agreement.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Federica.
Yes, thanks for that introduction. I want to dig down a little bit more into the data that is being collected and used and kind of how that works. So you talked about spacecraft data. Tell us a bit more about what kind of data is collected. Can we get real-time data so we can see deforestation in real time, or is that not yet available? And yeah, maybe you can talk a bit more about the collaborations involved in that data collection.
Yeah, so Imber has been very, very important to help us to do this work. As we know, Imber has been able to monitor the Amazon Brazilian forest for the longest time. And in fact, there is the best, picture image of that. And so we're trying to really use this collaboration to bring it to other countries in Africa and eventually to Asia as well. And we definitely have a great increase and help. In fact, we are able now to get the spatial resolution of 30 meters. That is exceptional. It wasn't possible really at the beginning. And so we'll not be able to do it at the moment with each country because, for example, Mozambique, and is also a Portuguese-speaking country, and there is cooperation with Brazil, and so was one of the countries will be able to bring this such of high resolution. It will take time before we'll be able to bring it to many other countries. But if that will work fine, that's the idea is really with the cooperation with Geo to be able to expand it to all the other countries. And this is, game changer, guys, because when we have, real data, that it can be really almost weekly, almost, day by day to be able to check. And at such a high resolution, with a certain, much more certainty, you go, into your global stock take, into your data and into your commitment somehow that you are into the Paris Agreement, and then bring, trust. Also, what we were saying, a different scale in the previous with the previous speakers, but it brings trust as well among countries, among government, the commitments that you are engaged in, your national determined contribution is not just in isolation. It's not with data that you collect, years ago. It's not with data that there are kilometer spaces and there is so much in the middle that you don't know what's going on, but it's really every 30 meters, what is going on, and they're really weekly that you get those. And so it really brings, more certainty to the Paris Agreement and the fight to make sure that we all work to achieve the climate goal of 1.5.
You make an interesting point, which is that if we aren't monitoring it, if we aren't measuring it, it's really hard to really understand the scale of the problem and the changes that we see. And of course, that 30 meters is critical, and maybe getting sub 30 meters in the future is important. But you also brought up, not just, we've been discussing data a lot today, but I think also processes are important. So we talked a bit about collecting data, but you mentioned things like data mining in the future. So the ability to go through massive quantities of data and pick out the features that you need. Do you think this area is an area of growth in the future?
Absolutely. Once we collect, data every 30 meters, and we collect it weekly or, by every 2 weeks, etc. What do? It's important they are preserved, because one element that is very important, the UN, is that has to be consistency of year after of the same data. And so to make sure that there is the consistencies, you need to have to make sure that you need the consistencies, you need to have data that you can control, a year after and double check, etc. But that is massive expensive. And so that's where we need also the support, partnership, where developing country needs financial support. Unfortunately, here at the COP, we're going to have even tomorrow, the world leader, a big statement on forest natural solution. Unfortunately, there is not finance linked to that. And so that's a big issue. That's why the CFRN, we're working in some tools really to bring factor in for this finance as well.
Just very, very quick, because we're running out of time. So just very quickly, Federica, just on the subject of finance, we've had a question coming in. How can we plug in the shortfall in finance that developed countries need to pay to developing countries? And how do we make sure this money flows to the communities that need to manage their natural resources?
Very good question. As I said, we don't have high expectation from the world leader declaration. It's great that they are bringing attention to the forest, but again, there is no finance involved in that, so it's not going to help. But what we think, though, is going to be critical that the private sector get involved, and so it's going to be critical that Article 6 market mechanism will be finalized appropriately. We don't need a big decision. We need main points. So we have one word. We have one global carbon accounting. We should have one accounting that is the one of the Paris Agreement, and not all standards that are coming in every time. And so we're really working to channel everyone towards this one climate goal. So private sector really needs to chip in on the right way. How do we make sure that the money goes where it needs to go, right? Papua New Guinea is the first one that is selling 9 million of the credits, and they're creating their trust fund, and that's where the money will be. Trust fund will be managed by EY, one of the big four of the audit companies, to make sure that really they're going to be regular reporting to make sure that the money will go through community. And last but not least, how we structure a plus. If the money does not go to the community, doesn't go to the actor that are doing the reduction or the increase of carbon stock, REDD Plus stops, because the reduction will not continue. And so the finance flow will stop there.
Thank you so much, Federica. Listen, we've run out of time, but I just want to say a huge thank you. I want you to go and enjoy the melee that is COP up in Glasgow. I hope you have an interesting and productive time up there. I know I think it's pretty chaotic up there from all accounts. Not literally getting to Glasgow, I think it's quite difficult.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Trees falling on train lines. We've run out of time.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. We've got just a few notices we've got here.
Yeah, so we just wanted to thank all of our speakers today for coming to be part of this event. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you giving up your time. We'd like to encourage those listening in to go to the partner exhibitor pages representing these organisations. You can find those at the Pavilion.
Yes, and that's it. Listen, I want you to, the Pavilion is still open and it's going to be here for the next sort of 11 days, but we've got something at, I think, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, well, at 12 o'clock, you have some networking tables. Yes. This is a chance for you to join a networking table for a non-moderated conversation. So please do feel free to join, carry on the discussions that we've been having this morning on these network tables, and you can find those at the Pavilion.
And then at 2 o'clock, we've got a session called The Elements of Security, which is curated by KTN, the KTN Defence and Security Lead, Hazel Bigg. So join Hazel at 2 p.m. on that. But from myself and from Suzie,
thank you so much for joining us today.
And we'll see you soon. Enjoy the rest of the Pavilion.